about it. Don't worry about it. Brian's here to talk to us about a ministry called Anchored Hope and to talk about the partnership that the Passage Church and Anchored Hope are going to have with, check it out, one another, okay? All right, so tell us about Anchored Hope and tell us a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, so first of all, it's great to be here. It's been great to meet so many of you this morning. It's great to be in a church that values the one another's and really wants to do life together. So Anchored Hope exists to come alongside churches as they're seeking to live out that value. Anchored Hope is a virtual counseling ministry. It's biblically grounded, clinically informed, virtual counseling. So our goal is to make biblical counseling accessible to those people and places who might not have access otherwise, or to those who might be intimidated to jump into counseling if it requires driving an hour away and walking into an office. We really want to make it easy for people to get started with counseling, and we want to partner with the local church as the church walks alongside one another in the process of just living life together and helping one another in the midst of our trials.
So Anchored Hope is so you kind of talk through a virtual counseling option that is, you'd say, biblically grounded, clinically informed, partnering with the local church, okay? So you say, okay, what is Anchored Hope? So now we've kind of got that part, right? It's an opportunity for us to enter into a counseling relationship virtually of people that we know and trust that have been vetted by Brian and his team, and that we have say, hey, these are people we would suggest and we would recommend and encourage you to take advantage of. All right, so talk to us about the vision, the general vision of Anchored Hope.
Yeah, so, I mean, the vision for Anchored Hope really kind of starts big, right? We want to see each person faithfully live out their God-given purpose in this life as they are transformed into Christ's likeness for the glory of God. I mean, that's the big vision behind it. And then we ask the question, well, how do we do that? Like, how do we get to that end? Well, our role in that is just one piece of that. We realize the local church has the primary piece, but we want to come alongside the church. And we do that by providing excellent counseling to anyone, anywhere, anytime, so that people might experience transformation for the glory of God. And you'll notice in both of those statements, transformation is right at the heart of it, right? We want to see, more than anything, people moving toward the likeness of Christ. And so we want to do that by providing some focused, skilled help for those who might feel stuck with whatever the issue might be. Maybe you're struggling with depression. Maybe you've been through some just incredible suffering, and you've struggled to know how to begin talking about it. Maybe there's an addiction issue in your life, and you need some help to think through, how do I apply God's word in a focused way to begin to move forward and honor Christ in this area of my life. Anchored Hope exists to provide the help needed to come alongside the church and help you in that.
All right, so let's connect a dot here that maybe you might be thinking. Okay, Matt, you just talked to us for however long that was, 5 minutes or so, about one anothering in Scripture. So now you're going to talk about one another, and then you're going to encourage me to do virtual counseling. And you might think virtual counseling, you in a room of your house, by yourself, on a screen, talking to someone you've never met in hopes to get help from whatever it is that you may be struggling with. Now, I'm thankful that you provide that, but I struggle to connect it to the one anotherings that you just spent time talking about. So Brian, talk to us about how does the life together value of the Passage Church, how is it connected to the ministry of Anchor Hope in our partnership, and kind of get into advocacy and some of those things.
Yeah, so we start with an understanding that churches that care for their members, as your pastor and elders care for you, often feel overwhelmed with that task. Often feel like, boy, the needs are great, and we want to be faithful in doing this, and we want to make sure that we care for each person well. And so we want to come alongside the church. We realize that elders are going to give an account for those under their care. I was a pastor for 20 years before working with Anchored Hope. I take that very seriously. And so we really see counseling as a team sport. It is something where we come in, we're providing the counsel, which is focused around that issue, but then we are wanting to open the channels of communication with those who are walking with you in the church. That might be one of your elders. That might be a small group leader. That might be someone who's just a trusted friend who you know loves you, who's going to speak the truth in love, who's going to show up at the doctor's office, who's going to bring the meal. And that person is what we call an advocate. And so our advocate program tries to provide a little bit of structure around how to live out that one another value in a meaningful way, so that essentially when someone receives counseling through Anchored Hope, you have at least 3 people involved in helping to care for you. So you have a counselor who's walking with you through a process. You have your pastors and elders who are caring for you and loving you and trying to oversee the process in a Christ-centered way. And you have an advocate who's walking with you and providing that tangible support that every one of us needs. And so we realize that virtual counseling, we think in terms of, if any of you are familiar with Paul David Tripp, he has a book called Instruments in the Redeemer's Hands, where he simply says, change in our lives is an all my people all the time project. And he says that happens as all of us are really intentional with one another. He breaks it down into four words that kind of summarize it: love, know, speak, and do, right? To love those around us, to be moved with compassion for the hurting, to be moved to want to lean into those who are struggling, to know, to want to listen well, to understand, to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and then to speak at the appropriate time, then to begin to speak the truth in love, and then do, to provide the tangible support needed to help that person move forward. Well, at Anchored Hope, we, alongside the church, are doing those first 3, love, know, speak, but we realize that the do component of that is uniquely entrusted to the local church in a way that we can't do. And so we rely heavily upon pastors, elders, small group leaders, friends who are going to walk with you in that process.
Yeah. So if you're saying, okay, where do I fit in this ministry? One of the things we're asking you to do is to pray about being trained as an advocate for those who would enter into the counseling process. Now, okay, what's that look like? How's that going to go? I'll just tell you briefly what I know right now. So Anchored Hope has some counseling advocacy training curriculum. Lily Pippin, who is one of our college students who's finishing up at Liberty, is going to be an intern to help us get this advocacy program off the ground. So she'll be coming to your missional community. She'll be in more detail explaining what advocacy looks like. And then she's going to be recruiting you to come to a training where you will be trained how to walk with someone through this. And here's the great part about the advocacy training as I see it, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, is that whether or not you are matched up with someone who is currently in counseling, you are going to be getting a kind of a base level of counseling training for not just those individuals who you're walking with, but every individual in your life. This advocacy piece, you will learn some things specific to the counseling that that they will be experiencing. You'll set in on some of those counseling sessions, but also you're going to be getting some information going to help you just to carry out some of this one another stuff that we've even talked about today. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an opportunity really to take, if you think of biblical counseling as a spectrum, there's a very organic aspect of that, right, where it's just happening in ordinary, everyday settings. It's believers just speaking the truth in love to one another over coffee in the church parking lot in ordinary moments. And then if you think of like the much more formal, structured end of that, where you're kind of going through sessions with a counselor and you're working on specific issues, we want to bridge that gap. Advocates are the ones that kind of have their arms in both worlds, right? The advocate says, I want to be there in those ordinary moments. And I'm also going to jump into the more structured component of that to be aware of what's happening and to be a bridge between those two worlds. So there's not this disconnect between counseling and the local church.
And as we've walked through, we've already talked about the biblical counseling and being biblically grounded, clinically informed, and virtual. There are 3 other words that Brian uses to describe what Anchored Hope offers, and that's Christ-centered, professional, and affordable. So, Brian, I want you to speak to the first 2, Christ-centered and professional, just for a moment, and then I'll speak to the affordability piece.
Yeah, so Christ-centered, you heard Matt a moment ago say that the number 1 value is gospel first, right? Well, that's our number 1 value too. The gospel has to come first in the counseling process. And so we want to reinforce with everything we do that transformation comes through the person and work of Jesus Christ. And so the counseling you receive is going to get practical. There are going to be some components where we think about what's going on. The clinically informed piece means we're paying attention to things like how has trauma affected you, how do addictions operate. But we are always coming back to that value of how does Christ speak into this? How does he work to bring about transformation in the midst of this issue that's going on in your life? So that's the first component. The professional component is simply that we have a very high standard for our counselors. We want to make sure that they're trained, that they know what they're doing. A lot of them have come out of just really great seminary backgrounds. Some of them come from Southeastern here under the training of people like Kristen Kellen, who's on our board. Some of them come from Southern Seminary, some from Westminster. But we very much value that high-level training that says our counselors, when they enter into that space with you, they know how to walk you through that process. But in addition, it's not just the credentialing, it's not just the training, it's their character. Our director and I, Rebecca Hanna, and I will say our last gut level question, if everything else is checking out, is would we put our kids in counseling with this person? And if we have any hesitation there, we say that's an automatic no. And so we want to know that the character is there. We want to know that these are people of humility and compassion. We want to know that these are people who listen well, and we want to know that they're people who've been well trained to walk alongside others.
Yeah. And so the affordability piece of it is what we want to come in and kind of the partnership that we have and make you aware of. So because of the counseling that they are offering here, the biblically grounded counseling, it's counseling that it's not you're going to submit to your insurance and they go, all right, yeah, it's biblical counseling. That's where we want you in. So here's what we're doing. A counseling session for an hour at Anchored Hope is $90. The Passage Church is saying, hey, if you are connected to the Passage Church and you say, hey, this is counseling I need, you'll come talk with staff, and so you will go on, we'll give you a discount code to enter, and so of that $90, we'll pay $60 and you'll pay $30. Okay? Because we are so serious about wanting you to get some of the help that Anchored Hope offers. And so we're going to do that. Now, remember, you said connected to, so a member of or a attender of the Passage Church. Don't come to me and say, oh, man, I got a third cousin, Ann, who's got a next-door neighbor who could really benefit from this. She'd really be great. Can you give me that code? No, I won't. I won't give you that code. And she can go pay full price to Anchored Hope. I would still push her to Anchored Hope, but she can go pay the whole thing. But if you're connected to the Passage Church, this is a way we want to serve and love you. Through this ministry that Anchored Hope offers. And so we're really excited about taking steps towards this. You say, okay, now what's going to be the process as we roll this out over the next several weeks? You would come to us and we would have a conversation. We would give you the discount code. And so put your pens away. You're not getting it right now, right? We would give you this discount code. You would go online and you would see a website that looks something like this right here with some faces and some names. And so Brian, talk us through quickly what we would see here on this page.
Yeah, when you go to the counselor page at Anchored Hope, you'll see a drop down of our 26 counselors. And at the top, you'll notice there are issues. And so we try to anticipate what are some of the common issues that people are coming to us with. And that enables you to just initially narrow down your search. We realize that when you go on a website and you see 26 counselors, you're like, oh, I don't know. Who do I start with? Where do I begin? And so we try to help you by saying, click on the issue that you're wanting counseling for, and then that will drop down the counselors who specialize in that area. Now, there still might be 8 or 10 counselors who specialize in that. And so in those cases, you are always welcome to, if you click on my profile there's a way to message me directly. So you can email me and say, hey, here's what's going on. Could you suggest 2 or 3 counselors who would be a good match for this issue? Or you can have one of your pastors or anyone can reach out to us, and we want to help you get paired up with the right counselor for your need. We usually try to recommend 2 or 3 just because we know your availability might vary from theirs, and so we want to make sure you got some options so that you can find someone where the calendars line up and it's a good match.
All right. So, really quick, as we wrap up here, one last question back to the illustration that I used to open the whole team lift. Some of us think, man, the counseling is not for me. I don't want to do counseling. We don't have a whole lot of time to dive into it, but I'll just give you a brief story. I've said before, I've been married 18 years, 17 good ones. Our first year of marriage was awful I'm sure for Jen. We didn't know how to do marriage, and we didn't have good premarital counseling, and we were kind of figuring it out. She was saying, hey, I think we need to go to counseling, and the only reason we didn't go to counseling was because of my own pride. It's the only thing that kept us out of counseling. And so we took a long time to work through things that I believe could have been worked through much quicker had it not been for my own prideful spirit. And so I've repented and asked her to forgive me of that. But I say that to say there may be somebody in the room who may say, man, I need this, but I wouldn't dare open my life to a counselor, to a member of the Passage Church, and to the leadership of the Passage Church. Anything quickly that you would kind of say maybe to somebody having that struggle or wrestle?
Yeah, I would just say that counseling is much more ordinary than you think. It really is walking with someone and getting a Christ-centered perspective to sometimes just having someone who's able to reflect back to you. Here's what I'm hearing. Here's some themes that I'm seeing. It helps us know ourselves a little bit better.
As we wrap up, we're going to pray in just a moment. We're going to sing, but we've been using this word biblically grounded and Christ-centered. We've already sang about the work of Christ accomplished for us on the cross. We are talking about orienting our lives around what Jesus Christ accomplished for us on the cross. And I don't want to leave here with the assumption that every person in the room has come to that conclusion in their own life and surrendered their life to Jesus, has said that Jesus is better than whatever this world has to offer. I believe that when Jesus Christ died on the cross, it counted for me. I believe that I've come to a place where I think God is calling me to himself and say, I want to surrender my life fully and completely to him. So I want to spend a moment in prayer just as we close and just ask the question. I'm glad that Anchored Hope is Christ-centered. I'm thankful for that value they have. But can I ask you the question, are you? Are you Christ-centered? Has Christ become the Lord of your life, at the seat of your life? Have you surrendered your life fully and completely to him because of what Jesus Christ accomplished for us on the cross, makes life with Christ available to us? A relationship with God is on the table because of what Jesus Christ accomplished for us on the cross. Would you take a moment today and just spend a moment in prayer, given all we've talked